Patra and Mason Lohrei were able to, graduate, so to speak, and be impact players, at least Patra for the first part of the season before he got injured, and then Lohrei down the stretch. The fact that they're still getting value in the NHL from, a very thin prospect pool, I think is a testament to their drafting and development. Neither of those guys were even first-round picks.
Bruins Beat is brought to you by PrizePicks and the GameTime app.
And welcome into the Bruins Beat, presented by PrizePicks. Go use that promo code CLNS to get up to $100 cash back on that first deposit. And we're presented by GameTime. Go use that promo code CLNS to get $20 off that first purchase. Terms apply. I'm Evan Marinofsky, joined today by Joe Pohoryles. Joe, what is up?
Not much. Just enjoying a bit of off season at the beach in Delaware for the week, and then pretty soon heading back up to Boston to get back into the grind of things as the season ramps up. So yeah, doing pretty well. How about you?
Good. Because you said you're in Delaware, right? I've never been to Delaware. How are the beaches down there?
I'm from Maryland, so I went there a lot growing up. So I'm maybe a little bit biased, but I think it's I think they're great. Maybe not like Florida, California. I've been there as well. So maybe, temper your expectations a little bit, but I think as a whole, it's pretty good.
It's funny to me, like I was in the Cape over the weekend and or last weekend, and I was, I said to someone when I was in the water, I was like, when we're logging, or when I'm logging like 60-hour weeks in January and it's freezing out and everything, like I will miss this. I will miss just the heat and being in the ocean. And I think like we're, you and I are hockey writers. We're in the hockey media world. I kind of like that our busy season, our busy time is like the fall, the winter, then like early spring. I like that we sort of, I mean, not that we don't work. We're all working very hard still during the summer, but it's just there aren't as many games. There's not as much to do. So it is nice that our quote unquote like off season is the summer. Whereas like if we covered baseball, it'd be the opposite. We would not be at the beach much during the summer, and we'd have to find beaches down south during our off season in the winter. So it again, it's a good problem to have. So I don't want to, it's a champagne problem.
Definitely.
But, but I do enjoy that we get to get some beach time during the summer, which is very, very nice. I was reading in The Athletic this morning. They do these fan surveys, which can sometimes be dangerous. I don't know if I'd always want to pull the fans on everything, but I am interested in what they think lots of the time. And Dom Luszczyszyn, who does great work over there, did a fan survey on their confidence in each team's front office. And he had, I think people identified themselves when they voted as either, a fan of that team or not a fan, and then, vote on other teams, what they think of each team. And the Bruins ranked 14th. Bruins came in at 14th. They got a B-. No surprise, the public was actually nicer about the front office than the fan base was, which is no surprise at all.
Yeah.
14 out of 32. Does that surprise you?
I think so. I mean, maybe factoring in the fans being on the more pessimistic side, maybe that kind of brings it down, because across the board, it seems like fans are largely more optimistic about their team than the public is. But I think, and I think Dom even mentioned it at the end of the article, the Islanders were 32, but they had the highest poll score of the last place teams, I think, since he's done, or, one of the highest scores. So I think part of that could be a factor of just every team scoring very well, and it's sort of just, it's very thin margins in the middle. But overall, yeah, I would say 14, just based on the success in recent years and some of the other teams ahead of them in here, that definitely is surprising. You'd expect them to be at least in the top 10 just based on where they're at as a franchise.
It's funny because you mentioned some of the teams above them, like Chicago at 12, San Jose at 13. And again, those teams are doing what they can. Both of those teams are vastly different situations than the Bruins. But one of my overarching takeaways from it was, and it's no fault of Kyle Davidson or Mike Greer as GMs. Kyle Davidson's the GM of Chicago, right?
Yeah.
Kyle Davidson's GM of Chicago. It's not their fault because they weren't there when those teams went to shit. They were not the reason. They are tasked with bringing those teams back. And they've both been very fortunate to get number 1 overall picks in the last 2 drafts. Chicago gets Connor Bedard, and San Jose gets Macklin Celebrini. So that's sort of, I think, why they get put up in that tier. I think fans kind of put expectations on both of those teams. But I'm going to give a little plug to Don Sweeney here. There were 1 or 2 times since Sweeney began in 2015 where a rebuild might seem likely. You think back to the retool in 2015 and 16. Some thought, hey, just blow the whole thing up. Bergeron's getting older. Krejci's getting older. And they end up, going to another Stanley Cup a couple of years later. You look at right now, Bergeron and Krejci are gone. Oh, blow the whole thing up. No, you have a core there, and they built around it. And we talk about last year being like the Moneyball Bruins. They end up getting to the second round, and obviously, we all wanted them to put up more of a fight against the Panthers, maybe force a Game 7. But I still think it's impressive as hell that roster got where they did. And you look at sort of different talent acquisitions over the years that have panned out. The Pavel Zacha trade. You look at last year, Parker Wotherspoon, Justin Brazeau, these sort of diamonds in the rough, and I just think the consistency of contention, that to me has always been incredibly impressive with this Bruins team. And yes, they have not gotten over the hump since 2011. We have rattled on that many a time. But to 14, and again, I know this isn't the end all be all, but it's still, The Athletic has a lot of readers. A lot of people participated in this survey. This is a lot of people's opinions. They're a top 10 at least to me. And that's where I sort of, there's that disconnect of and Dom writes this, and because so many people, draft and develop, the public gave the Bruins a C, the fan base gave the Bruins a D. And Dom says, folks, it's time to put the 2015 draft to bed. Yes, the memes were legendary, and the haul ended up being as underwhelming as it looked on day one relative to what else was out there. But that was 9 years ago, and they still nabbed 2 impact players in DeBrusk and Brandon Carlo. By overall value, they did fine. That draft is also sandwiched between 2 incredible drafts, where Boston got Pastrnak at 25 in 2014, and Charlie McAvoy at 24 at number 14 in 2016. Wow, hard to read in the summer, Joe.
Yeah.
And add Jeremy Swayman at number 111 in 2017, and that's 3 franchise players over 4 years without a top 10 pick. To me, that's more impressive. That is more impressive. And again, we don't know yet what Davidson and Greer's first couple drafts are going to pan out to be. We don't know that yet. But that's where I think that narrative has stuck with the Bruins are terrible at drafting. And I think over the last couple of years, they've been a little bit better, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think even the past couple years, recently, the talk's been, they've got one of the worst prospect pools. There's not a lot of depth, which is true. That's not incorrect. But the fact that from such little depth, even just this past season, Patra and Mason Lohrei were able to, graduate, so to speak, and be impact players, at least Patra for the first part of the season before he got injured, and then Lohrei down the stretch. The fact that they're still getting value in the NHL from, a very thin prospect pool, I think is a testament to their drafting and development. Neither of those guys were even first round picks.
That's the biggest thing. And I think, you look at Patra being a year ahead or a couple of years ahead of where we all kind of thought he would be. Lohrei stepping up, and we'll see what he's like this season. But again, all signs point to him being an impact top 4 player someday in the NHL. You also get Johnny Beecher stepping up and filling a role there. Trent Frederick's development over the last couple of years. And I know those are first round picks. Everybody thinks, first round pick has to be this high end skill player. And I know that, higher end players were drafted right after those guys. But they still turned, Frederick turned into an everyday middle sixer, which I think is a very valuable thing in the NHL. And Johnny Beecher so far shown himself as an apt 4th line speedster center. Again, I'm not trying to carry water for Sweeney or this Bruins team. I just think there is a kind of a false narrative of, they're so bad at drafting. And we'll see this year. I mean, again, we won't know about this current 2024 draft for many years. You were there in Vegas. I don't think we've talked since you were there. How was that? How was that whole experience? I mean,
it was I mean, all the hype around the Sphere, I think for the most part is pretty warranted. Just all the graphics that they had. And I did get a little bit of a headache kind of looking up, but that might've just been the position we were at on the floor. But, no, it was great. I mean, the weather was really hot, but other than that, inside the Sphere, it was nice and cold. And no, it was a really great atmosphere. And if I was if I was an NHL draft pick, which I'm far from that, but I would have looked back and wished, wow, I wish that I could have experienced that as a pick, getting selected there. So, all those prospects must feel insanely lucky just being in that spot. Might have been better if they were 21 when they were being drafted, just based on the location. But other than that,
I was gonna say,
seems like a
right.
great location. Yeah.
Maybe, it's hard to. I don't think that's gonna fly out there.
Right. Yeah.
But I think it should be there every year. I think that's the
Mhm.
perfect spot for it. There's a lot of hype around it. It looks like a big deal. It is a big deal. I wasn't there, but just everything I saw looked incredible.
Mhm.
So I that's why to me I think it should be there every year.
Yeah, I
The
agree.
arenas are fine. I think was it who was it? Was it Colin Campbell who mentioned at the end of the weekend we might, have to consider doing this again or something? Because I know they were sort of banking on 2025 basically being via Zoom, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think
So
they were trying to go like the NFL route and have every team like sort of work out of their, HQ or whatever, and then just sort of maybe have a location where the prospects are, but not like an all encompassing together draft.
yeah, and I have no doubt that I'd assume teams would almost rather be in their headquarters because you're more comfortable in your own space. You can talk more freely. You don't have to yell across the table or something like
Mhm.
that. But I just think it's a spectacle. Do Vegas every year. That's a
Mhm.
cool place. I am dying to go see the Sphere. I want to see. I know U2 was playing there for a while. I'd love to see
Mhm.
U2 there.
I think a
Um,
concert would be even better there. Yeah. As
oh
great
yeah.
as the draft was, I think something like that would be awesome.
Yeah, and it just seems like a hell of a spot to see a concert. And I know a lot. I know some people who have gone out and seen it, and they've loved it. So I hope that they continue on with that draft stuff. I want to keep talking about the Bruins front office. Maybe
Mhm.
this podcast will change the narrative about this, Joe. Maybe we'll be the shapeshifters on this. But
Yeah.
first, quick word from our friends over at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the PrizePicks community today. Get in on the excitement and win up to 100 times your cash with the summer games on PrizePicks. With PrizePicks, you could turn $10 into 1,000 while watching Team USA rack up the gold medals this summer. You can make a PrizePicks lineups of players across basketball, soccer, tennis, golf, and more in as little as 60 seconds. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 players' stat projections, and you're locked in. Personally, on the Red Sox side of things, I'm going with Jarren Duran more hits. I'm also going with Rafi Devers more hits. Those two are just on fire as the Red Sox make their quest for the postseason. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code CLNS on PrizePicks for a deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. So I found it funny in this fan base survey, or from the fan survey, that the fan base gave the Bruins vision a C plus.
I was just thinking about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and what
Yeah.
I get it, and I like that Bruins fans are pessimistic. I don't want to cover a team where the fans are delusional with, oh, the team is amazing. This team is the best. They can't do anything wrong. I like that fans are kind of like us and questioning them and what are they doing here. But that's one. And we've said this a lot, and I remember when the Bruins were looking like they were going to blow that series lead to Toronto, where in the live stream I would do after fans were like, blow the whole thing up. And I get it, right? I get it. When something goes wrong, when the Celtics lose in the playoffs or the Patriots or the Red Sox, I'm like, oh, just destroy it. But I do think in terms of vision, you have a 50-goal scorer locked up forever in David Pastrnak. You have a legit #1 defenseman locked up long-term in Charlie McAvoy. Jeremy Swayman, who we'll get to in a bit, at some point should be signed long-term, and that's your goalie of the future. You have Elias Lindholm now. You've got young guys like Mason Lohrei. To me, I think the vision's actually good. I'd put the vision more at a B. I'm curious what you would put for that and what you see.
Yeah, that was the biggest surprise, the thing that surprised me the most. Obviously, the draft and develop reputation, which we, talked about earlier. But for that, I mean, there's some teams on here where, you can't even look at the team and decide what direction they're going in or what they're going to do. But the Bruins, we talked about their consistency, their playoff results. Obviously, fans want more, and that's justified. And there's, another level they can reach. But their vision is pretty clearly, contending every single year. And maybe I'm just simplifying what vision means, but in terms of where, their goals and the direction they're heading in, that seems to be the most clear thing on this list of categories that they graded as well.
Yeah, and I'm looking at other teams above them, and you look at teams like number 5 is Vancouver. They were 30th last year. So again, they're up that high, number 5, because they had such a good run. They had such a good season. And obviously one season can change everything. Montreal was 6. They're entrenched in a huge rebuild. And again, Dom writes, I'm not sure there's a more promising rebuild in this league than the one currently being cooked up by Jeff Gorton and Kent Hughes. But again, we're fortunate to be in a market where a Bruins rebuild would be cataclysmic, a true rebuild, years long. I mean, that'd be painful. I've been doing this podcast since 2019. I've never had to talk about a rebuilding team. I don't know if I could do it. I think that's what all right, well, I'm done. I've done my time. Yeah. I give up. But rebuilds are so far from certain. And I get why those teams rank high. I get why their vision is, good, because you clearly know what their vision is and all that. But to me, the Bruins' vision is clearer. They are a contender every single year. They made free agent moves in the offseason that seem to bolster their chances. Whereas, again, teams like Montreal are definitely on the right track. But as we've seen with Buffalo, Detroit was hammered in this story. Detroit was, I mean, for years, the Yzer plan hasn't been really working, and now it finally is reflected in this story. So in terms of vision, I was shocked. I was surprised that the Bruins got a C+ from their own fans, because to me, vision, I get why fans rag on drafting. I get that, right? Lack of high-end talent, all that stuff. You go back to 2015, which again, I agree with Dom on this. It's time to, it's almost 10 years ago now. Can you believe 2015 is almost 10 years ago?
Yeah, that's
it's insane. It's completely insane. But again, vision, to me, that seems fairly clear. So the fan survey is great. I always love when the fans give their 2 cents. I'm sure that fans will give their 2 cents in the YouTube comments on this show, which I always appreciate. I always read the comments. I always read the YouTube comments for good or bad. I want to get into Jeremy Swayman, and I want to get into the free agency moves the Bruins have done this season, how it would affect this survey. But first, quick word from our friends over at GameTime. It's the summer, which means nothing beats a ball game. The crack of the bat, the roar of the crowd, and the nice weather. It's both relaxing and exciting. The perfect combination. Life is good. Have those experiences with GameTime. GameTime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the GameTime app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, GameTime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. The Red Sox are actually good, which makes it even more fun to be at Fenway this summer, but maybe you're planning a trip around going to an opposing ballpark, which is actually one of my bucket list items, hitting every MLB ballpark in the country. Thankfully, I have GameTime to help that happen. Some of the things I love about GameTime are last-minute deals. Save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater. There's flash deals, save even more, with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. And I like the zone deals. Save even more when you choose a section and let GameTime choose the seats. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So, before we get to the Swayman stuff, one last thing with the survey, and Dom mentions it, and I think it's correct. You look at the Bruins with those two big free agent signings this offseason, Lindholm, Zadorov. The Athletic model hated those signings. Thought that they didn't age well, thought that those guys are coming off bad years. To me, that's where and again, not that the survey's everything, but it's August 6th and we need things to talk about. And this is something to talk about. And I do think it's I think it is legitimately interesting. I think that's where the Bruins fluctuate the most next year, where if Lindholm puts up 70 something points and Zadorov is a force on the back end and the Bruins, get past 2 rounds of the playoffs, the Bruins will be in the top 5. Mm-hmm. Whereas if those signings don't work out this season or start to stink, Bruins are going to plummet down this list. And I give the Bruins credit for taking a swing with those free agent signings, but I do think those could be very hit or miss.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of concern about Lindholm's production as well, sort of taking a step down for the past couple of years. 2-3 years ago, he was a point per game player. I think the supporting cast that he's entering in and the line that he's projected to be on should help matters, but it's never certainty in that. So I think especially for him and, where he might be aging in a couple years as well, that sort of this year will sort of be the big, one of the big determining factors for how the rest of that deal goes.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, both are locked up, long term, mm-hmm. And there's always a risk with. We say this all the time with free agency. There's a risk with signing guys long term that haven't been signed long term with their own teams because But I think Zadorov's an interesting case of sort of coming on a little bit late. And Lindholm's an interesting case just with how things shook down in Calgary. Because, again, he looked like a part of their future plans, but so did, Johnny Gaudreau, so did Matthew Tkachuk. That franchise is its own issue. So, again, I think I projected Lindholm at somewhere, I think it was 72 or 73 points this year. I just think in terms of playing with Pastrnak, probably Zacha, playing on that first power play unit, I just think points are going to come. And I think that's where he's going to get his production, and it's going to be a bump in production. So, but as you said, the question will be how those age. Does Lindholm at year 4, is he not even near worth the money? Or is he, a good solid second line center, which at that money, not the worst thing in the world. So we'll see how that plays out. The big storyline, though, of, what is going to happen, Jeremy Swayman, still not signed. We're recording this August 6th. So, I keep looking at Twitter because I said this to you before we recorded. I was like, somehow it's going to happen as we record this. Still not signed. When do you think this happens? What have you thought of this whole situation?
Yeah, I think I'm trying to remember last year. I believe Frederick and Swayman's bridge deal a year ago. I believe those were all signed somewhere around mid to late August, I believe. So I don't know if that's I don't know if that really means anything for this because it's two very different scenarios. You're trying to get someone in long term versus, bridge extensions or whatever they are. So I think but basically I think the theme of that is they're going to take their time. They're going to come to the conclusion. I think with over a month until training camp even opens, I think they feel like they've got the runway to work this out. But at a certain point, I don't know what clues there might be as to when that'll happen, but I think it's got to be sometime in the next 2 to 3 weeks at most, I'd assume.
Yeah, I think it happens right before camp when they sort of start to reconvene. I don't know what the holdup is. Maybe they're just kind of taking their time, because it is the summer. We were joking a few weeks ago. They're on vacation, which good for them, right? Now's the time to take it. But I'm curious if it's that Swayman wants a shorter term deal to make more money down the road, or if they are just both looking at 8 years, but comes down to price. I've been saying all along, I think it should be 8x8. That's what he gets, I think, given what he has shown you, given what he could be, given his age. He's 25. So again, if you're giving him, I was arguing with Haggs about this. If you give him a 4-year deal, if he does the Austin Matthews route, where it's hey, I want, the most money now, but then I want more when the cap goes up. You're giving him probably a long-term deal at 30, potentially 31. Which again, goalies age differently, but still to give an 8-year deal at 30 is always kind of a risk. And obviously yes, giving Swayman an 8-year deal right now would be somewhat of a risk, but I like the age he's at. I like what he's shown. I just think he has the right mindset to be the guy. We saw this in the playoffs. We've seen it at different times. I think he's the mindset to be the guy. So I'm not worried though. I'm not. I don't think the sky is falling. They'll get to an agreement at some point. They traded Linus Olmark. So it'd be hilarious if they went into next year with like Jonas Corposalo and Brandon Busty as the starters. Swayman is like gone. It's like, all right, well, I don't know what happened here. But I don't think that'll be the case. But yeah, that's all the Bruins news there is. So fan survey, Swayman. Joe, get back to enjoying Delaware, the beautiful beaches there. Have you
Not many people say that, but
we'll go back to Maine. Have you been to Maine?
I have been.
Okay.
Yeah. That's no, it's gorgeous there. I'd love to go back, especially during the summer with the beach and everything. But yeah, still got a soft spot for down here.
I was going to say, because you're from Maryland, and I always feel like New Englanders know Maine. Like, I love Southern Maine during the summer. The beaches are Gunkwit, Old Orchard Beach. And obviously, this is, Acadia. Those are the big places. But, like, I feel like outside of New England, Maine is not known that much. It's kind of like a nice little kept secret for New England. And whereas the Cape is very mainstream, everybody comes to the Cape. But, like, Maine is, to me, and I grew up going there. So, like, I love Maine. But I feel like it's not as much as known to other parts of the country.
Yeah, wasn't really on my radar until after I moved up. So I think that holds up, before staying in the mid-Atlantic, kind of just was around there. And then obviously knew Maine, but I never knew that, the beach is there, the town's there during the summer. I was there during the 4th of July a couple years ago. And it was just a great, great spot.
Yeah. I mean, the water is freezing. Which is the one little downside. But I grew up on it. So like when I go to the Cape, it's like, oh my God, this is bath water.
Yeah.
But I can't say enough about Maine. Like, and I know a lot of these listeners understand it because, a lot are from here. But if you're not, I cannot recommend Maine highly enough. Don't tell your friends, listeners, Bruins Beat listeners, please don't tell your friends. But it's our own little secret in here. But Maine is, I love Maine. I cannot get enough of Maine. And I'm going there in a couple weeks. So I think it's like right before things kick into gear. So it'll be a nice weekend away before things get going. Joe, what can the people look forward to from you at NHL.com?
I do have actually, in a couple days, I believe I've got a story from development camp. They sort of spread them out across the summer just to not, clog the site at once.
I know what that's like.
Yeah, so I've got a feature. I forgot which one. I wrote a couple for them there. I think Brett Harrison. I got a feature on Brett Harrison coming out in a couple days. So just sort of, kind of a dark horse. Probably not going to make the Bruins roster, but someone, younger, going to be in the AHL for another year. Going to try to fight his way up. He's good friends with Matt Patra, which I sort of got into in the story. So he's going to try to repeat what Patra did and surprise people, but we'll see if that happens. A little bit different scenario this year compared to last year in terms of the forward group, but yeah, so that'll be coming out in a couple days, I believe.
And you wrote your first New England Hockey Journal story, and it was on the cover.
I did, yes.
Elliot Greenwald got on the cover. I don't have the magazine with me, or else I'd hold it up. You can go find it on Twitter or the Hockey Journal website.
I ordered 5 copies, so listeners should do the same.
I agree. There you go. I agree. But yeah, congratulations on that. It was a fantastic story. And it was a great cover. It was an easy cover to pick.
Yeah.
We were trying to like figure and it was like, all right, well, that's a layup. But anyways, Joe, thank you for joining. And that's this week's Bruins Beat. I'm Evan Marinofsky. Bruins Beat listeners, have a great rest of your week.